So what else? Got a couple other points. So I wrote this article. It's done very well for CBC. It's the top 10 tips for budding entrepreneurs. So I assume everybody here has somewhere along the way thought about starting your own business. Has everybody? I gotta tell you, here's the best thing for me about starting a business. It's the ability to create something from nothing. Every day when I walk into my office, I walk past the front door, and we employ about 130 people now, and I think 7 years ago, this didn't exist. This was vaporware. We created this. 7 years ago, we did 400,000 in sales. This year, we'll do 85 million. I mean, I love that. I love the creative process of building something from nothing. I also like winning. I like to make money. I like to be successful. Those are all good things, but I love the creative process. So I wrote this article a couple of years ago because they needed something to put on the CBC website. I wrote it and I had too little sleep. It's kind of like the Tom Cruise movie where he writes the manifesto, and the next day wakes up and says, oh, why did I write this? So number one, you got to believe in yourself and the business. People come on our show and we tell them, this is a horrible idea. It's never going to work. When I started out, nobody believed in my idea. I was selling computer security before the internet was even popular. I would call people up, I would call people up and I'd say, hi, we sold firewalls. So I was the first guy in Canada to sell a commercial firewall. Does everybody know what a firewall is, right? Here's the typical sales call. Hi, do you have internet access? I mean, that was it. So all my friends said, you're nuts. You're going to sell security for stuff people don't even have today? It's crazy. So you got to believe in yourself because there's no shortage of people that are willing to tell you it's not going to work. And most of them that believe in you are probably your friends that are going to write you a check, your family who has to believe in you. So you got to believe in yourself. I was talking to Amanda, who's in your graduate program. She's here somewhere. And so she said to me, I couldn't be an entrepreneur because I'm not comfortable with risk. And I said to her, you know, everything I've done didn't seem risky to me at the time. Looking back, I think, oh, that was nuts. Why did I ever do that? Most people that have no experience in business come on our show, and here's the analogy that they think of risk. They think starting a business is like standing on the edge of a cliff and having the courage to jump off. Regardless of what's at the bottom, just got to jump off that cliff. To me, that's not courage, that's stupidity. Most people I know who are worth a lot of money and are successful will tell you they're not risk-oriented. So I never think of standing on the edge of a cliff and jumping off. I always think, why can't I walk to the bottom and test the water before I jump off? If I create a product, before I spend another $1 million on development, why can't I go ask some customers if they'll actually buy it? I had dinner with Mike Ozarides about a year ago. He's the founder of RIM, right? So I said, Mike, how did you guys at RIM decide which product to develop? Because RIM has 15,000 employees, very smart guys, come to him every day and say, we should do this, we should do that, we should have this application. So he says, it's the same thing we've done since the day we started RIM. We never develop anything unless we have a paying customer. Nothing. So well, how do you do that? So well, we go to a customer, and a customer says, we really want this feature. We say, great. Pay us to develop this feature, and we'll give you 6-month exclusivity on that feature before we release it to anybody else. The only truth with your customers is the ones that cut a check for it. Everything else is theory. And sometimes you got to lead the market, but most of the time can ask somebody if it's going to work. So test before you believe. Number 3, everyone lies. Everyone. Sometimes they mean to lie because, you know, there are bad, mean people in the world. Just as a side note, my experience is actually the opposite. Most people in life have been very nice to me. My experience with ultra-successful people, not just in business but in politics, is that they're very, very nice. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be, you know, the guy that yells and screams. And Kevin and I get into this fight all the time. I say, Kevin, how do you motivate people? He says, how do I motivate people? I tell them if they don't do their frigging job, I'm going to fire them. And I think, yeah, you know what? That works for a short period of time. But I got to tell you, that's not my experience. I don't think people want to be managed. I don't think people want to be threatened. I think people want to be led. If you can inspire a workforce, you're going to get so much farther ahead than you are by bullying people. So why do people lie? Well, partly because based on the information they have at that point in time, it's what they believe. A lot of our customers, my sales guys will go out, or the engineers will go out, and they'll ask a customer, are you going to buy this? And the customer says, absolutely. Then the next day, his boss comes along and pulls the budget for that project. You didn't mean to lie to me, but stuff happens. You'll run into a venture capitalist who will say, I'm going to give you the money. And then a week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, and nothing happens. So you just got to be aware that I believe everything everybody tells me, but I also want some proof along the way. So when a customer tells me the order's coming on Friday, I call them Thursday just to verify nothing's changed. If an investor tells me they're going to invest by Tuesday, I call them Monday. So you've just got to be aware that things change all the time in the real world and in business. Bring a compass. You got to know where you're going. Why did you get into commerce? What do you want to do? What's the end goal? I always say you got to bring a compass because you don't want to get lost in the woods. Because if you get lost in the woods, you might meet your friends, and that could be uncomfortable. So you've got to know where you're going. You've got to have a compass. And here's the reality is, where you're going will constantly change. What I want to achieve in the next 2 years is completely different than it was 2 years ago. Just as another side note, people always overestimate what they can achieve in 1 year, but they underestimate what they can achieve in 10. 10 years ago, well, more than 10 years ago, but if I was to look at my life 10 or 12 years ago, it would be night and day over what it is today. And I think it's human nature. We can picture a year, but we can't picture 10. What I'm telling you is you can go from nothing to a lot of money and a huge amount of success and have an impact on the world in 10 years. But you can't do it in a year. So most people underestimate. If they can't catch you, they can't overtake you. When you're starting out, it's all about speed. It's all about speed. You just got to go. 90% of the things you try are going to fail. 90% of the things you think are going to work are going to fail. And at your age, if you don't have the ability to quickly get up and try it again, it's going to be really tough. Because here's another fact. Most people in this room are in pretty good shape and lots of energy and, you know, pretty, have a passion for life. As you get older, most people, they kind of get beat down by life. You know, they get comfortable. They get to a point in their life, they don't want to do that anymore. They don't want to get up as early. They're not as driven. Things change. The best time to take risks is at this age. Because your downside is so low. My very first business that I started with my wife and I, she was an eye doctor. She just graduated. Wasn't